had an ISIS flag hanging from his truck. Well, why they initially said definitively it wasn't a terrorist attack when it turned out to be one. But, there's a lot of questions that we're going to have.
Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry says his state is in mourning.
It's a somber day here in the city and around Louisiana. I mean, we have parents that are going to have to, that are making funeral arrangements as we speak, that are waiting to have their loved ones released to them. And again, I mean, each of those is a reminder of the terrorism that exists and people and the evil out there that they want to afflict on America.
The New Orleans terrorist was able to drive around police cars to access the street where 15 were killed because the city lacked the manpower to keep permanent barriers working properly. Former Michigan gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon, host of the Tudor Dixon podcast, says this is what happens when you defund the police.
Whether it is securing the border or making sure our police officers have the resources that they need, making sure that our police officers are supported, law enforcement in general. You have so many elected officials who have just gone after police that even our departments and our department heads have said we are not able to get the manpower we need because we've been so viciously attacked by the media and by elected officials. Those people are not qualified to serve. It is time for the American people to say we are going to put America first again, and that means we're going to have safe cities, and that means that public safety will be supported. And if you are not supporting them, or if you historically have not supported the police, you do not belong in public office.
Rabbi Aryeh Lightstone is the former assistant to Israeli Ambassador Friedman. He says the problem in this country when it comes to terrorists is a lack of leadership.
This protest that happened in Times Square, that happened within hours after this person with an ISIS flag committing a terror attack, has gone on, frankly, for 16 months. After Israel was attacked on October 7th, on October 8th, on all of our campuses and all of our main cities, there were protests not against terror, but in favor of terror. And the White House just sat there and said, well, they have a point. And what we need is leadership that says they don't have a point. There is no room for terror. There is no room for radicalization. But at the end of the day, we elect leaders in order to lead. And when leaders look both ways at terrorists and at victims and say, they both have a point over here, that's not leadership.
Parents and Christians need to stay involved in the battles against secular education. More from Chris Woodward.
The call to action was made by Dr. Alex McFarland. He told Today's Issues that secular education has definitely been a measurable negative for our country.
I wrote a book 10 years ago called Stand Strong in College, and it's based on a seminar that I've done in several hundred churches called What You'll Hear Your Freshman Year, preparing for the ways that college will challenge your faith. And I interviewed 300 college students from about 20 states for that book, Stand Strong in College. And even 10 years ago, guys, the incredibly, just at best, unnecessary and at worst, ungodly, un-American indoctrination that students go through, not only in classes like anthropology and history and psychology, but just in freshman orientation.
McFarland recalled one interview he did with a student from Phoenix that was going through freshman orientation at the University of Arizona.
I'm not going to repeat what was part of this, but it was immoral. It was unspeakably nasty sexual indoctrination.
I'm Chris Woodward.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
What we believe about the Bible is based on what we believe about its source.
The God Who Speaks, the award-winning documentary from the American Family Association, is now available in a special limited edition DVD set. This release includes a Sunday school curriculum and 2 hours of additional footage. Go to thegodwhospeaks.org to get your copy today. thegodwhospeaks.org. Welcome to Today's Issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
Well, Ed ain't here, so I'll have to fill in for him. I don't know what happened there. But I'm Tim Wildman, and welcome to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network for this Thursday, January the 2nd. And if you're ready to hear this, 2025. 2025 has arrived. And joining me in studio is Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning on a Thursday that feels kind of like a Monday.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Since we, all the holidays, and here we are, January, New Year's Day. Nobody worked yesterday much. So, Chris Woodward.
I got to tell you, I haven't seen Ed all year. I don't know where he is.
That's pretty good. And our brother Ray Pritchard's in Kansas City. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Tim. Happy New Year. How you doing today?
Happy New Year to you. What do you got? You got a good word for us from the Bible?
Well, I do.
Or if you got a bad word, listen. If you got a bad word, go ahead. No, I'm just kidding.
I got no bad words.
Okay.
I got a good word
Okay.
from the good word of the Lord.
Okay.
Book of Hebrews. I've been studying it, Tim, because I'm going to be teaching it in South Korea in early March. And you come to Hebrews chapter 7, and there's a technical kind of argument in Hebrews 7. It's a little hard to understand, but this much is clear. Let me just read this verse and make a comment. The former priest, he's talking about the Jewish high priests, were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office. See, that was the problem with the old system. You had a high priest, he was a good guy and you liked him, then he goes up and dies and he's gone. And the next guy comes along, he's hard to understand, then he dies and somebody else comes along and you don't really like him, and maybe you get another high priest you really like and really understands you, but he dies. That's the point of Hebrews 7. It doesn't matter whether good guys or bad guys. The high priest lives for a while and then he dies, but listen. But Jesus, verse 24, holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. And he also says in Hebrews 7, because of the power of an indestructible life. Unlike these human high priests that come and go, Jesus is a friend who will be there today, tomorrow, and every day, forever and ever and ever. And I think that's a really good word here on the second day of the new year. And I am thinking of this personally this morning. Marlene and I have got some dear friends in a distant part of the country we've known for over 40 years. Wife's husband, dear friend of ours. And at this hour, the wife is in surgery for a very difficult form of cancer, and the outcome is uncertain. But I mean, at this hour, she's under the knife, and I think to myself, we saw her not too many weeks ago, and Tim, though knowing what's at stake, she was very calm, full of faith, full of confidence in God, because we have a friend in high places. High places. We got a friend who knows us, a friend who understands. And I can imagine, Tim, among some of our listeners, there's a bit of trepidation in some hearts. Maybe 2024 was hard, and maybe 2025 looks like it's going to be even tougher. We have a high priest who is there today, tomorrow, and forever. It's like the old song says, what a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. So I just want to say to all of you here at the first of the year, look to Jesus. Turn to him. He will never, ever fail you. And I'm looking to him this morning on behalf of our friends. And I just want to say to everybody, Happy New Year. Jesus is a wonderful Lord. You will not face anything this year that Jesus can't handle. Let me say that again. You will not face anything this year that Jesus can't handle. Trust him today. Trust him tomorrow. You'll be glad you did.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Ray, for that word of encouragement.
It's good.
And we all needed to hear that from the book of Hebrews. Well, again, folks, it's January the 2nd, 2025. Ed is not here today. Fred, Chris, and Ray. Sandy Rios will be with us later this hour. Like most of you, I woke up yesterday morning to the tragic news of what happened in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, but a secondary story that maybe didn't get as much national attention, didn't get as much national attention, but you wondered what is going on there, was the situation in Las Vegas where a car caught on fire / exploded in front of the Trump Hotel there in Las Vegas. And joining us to talk about that, and is it related maybe to what happened in New Orleans, is Randy Sutton. Randy is founder of Wounded Blue, a support for injured and disabled law enforcement officers, and is a friend of Steve Jordahl, our colleague here. Good morning, Randy.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
This is Tim, and are you? Where? Tell us about your organization first, and what do you do, and where do you operate out of?
Well, I'm a retired Las Vegas police lieutenant and founder of the Wounded Blue, which is the National Assistance and Support Organization for Injured and Disabled Law Enforcement Officers, a nationwide charity that helps thousands of officers injured either physically or emotionally and psychologically. And as I said, I'm a 24-year law enforcement veteran in Nevada, retiring as a lieutenant, and 10 years as a police officer and detective in New Jersey.
What's your website again for people who want more information?
TheWoundedBlue.org. That's TheWoundedBlue.org.
Okay, Randy, what happened in Las Vegas?
You know, I'm a national commentator on law enforcement topics, and I was on doing a number of interviews relating to the terrorist attack in New Orleans when I received information that a vehicle had exploded in front of the Trump Hotel here in Las Vegas, which is literally just miles from where I live. It's a hotel that I'm very familiar with, as I've attended functions there many times. And when I heard that, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And originally the report came out that it was a vehicle fire. And then for several hours, not much information came out until it was determined that this individual had pulled into the valet area. Now, this is let me just set it up for you. Trump Hotel is not a massive casino hotel. There's no casino at all. It's just a boutique hotel. It's off the strip, but within very close proximity to it. But it's a smaller hotel, and it's the vehicle pulled into the Tesla truck, one of those weird-looking trucks, and it pulled in. The driver did not get out of like normally. You pull into the valet, you jump out, you hand your keys to the valet guy, and off you go. He stayed in the vehicle, and then suddenly there was this massive explosion. There was a great deal of confusion at first. You know, was this a vehicle fire? They would be, somebody came out and said, the batteries on these things, you never know about them. But this was clearly not a battery fire. This was an intentional act. And as we developed more information, we determined that this pickup or this truck was packed with fireworks, including the big ones like two of their quarter sticks of dynamite mortar, their major fireworks, gasoline cans, and camping fuel tanks. So this was in all sense a car bomb that was detonated in front of the Trump Hotel. Now, the symbolism, of course, here we have Tesla, Elon Musk's company, and utilizing that vehicle as a car bomb in front of the Trump Hotel. You don't have to
right.
be a rocket science to figure out that this was that there's a message here. This is the investigation is underway. They have identified the driver, who is from Colorado Springs, and there is a strong nexus in the fact that both the New Orleans killer's vehicle and this Trump Hotel bomber's vehicle were rented by individuals by the same rental app, not a regular rental car company, but a rental app where you can rent a car from a private party. In addition, there's also been information put out that both of these men served in the Army at the same base.
Oh.
There's a lot done here, a lot of investigative work that needs to be done.
Okay, I didn't know that part. So the fella in the killer in New Orleans was shot and killed. The guy in Las Vegas that drove the car up there and then set it ablaze, where is he now?
Oh, he's very, very dead. He blew
okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Fred, I misunderstood. So he
stayed
in
the
suicide
car.
mission.
Yeah, he stayed in the car and blew himself up along with the vehicle.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Wow. But was anybody else hurt or injured?
There were 7 injuries, but relatively minor, which is an absolute miracle that he didn't do more damage. I think now this is conjecture at this point, but Elon Musk came out with a statement earlier. The way he packed the vehicle with explosives, this killer or this bomber didn't realize that the truck that he utilized for this purpose was designed in such a way that it didn't blow up the way he thought it was going to.
Yeah.
It actually contained the blast much more than if it had been a regular pickup truck. So I think he had intended to do a great deal more damage and take out people as well, but was not particularly skilled in that determination. And maybe his desire to make a statement by utilizing a Tesla might have interfered with his major plans.
So Randy, we're talking to Randy Sutton. He's founder of Wounded Blue. It's a support group for injured and disabled law enforcement officers, but he resides in the Las Vegas area, and we're talking to him about the story in Las Vegas about the Tesla car, which was blown up, a suicide mission blown up yesterday in front of the Trump hotel there. About I don't know how many hours there were difference between that and the New Orleans attack, but they both appeared to me, Randy, to be Islamic jihadists. Who were, the guy in New Orleans had an ISIS flag, right? I mean, I think he wanted everybody to know his motives. But I don't know about the guy. And do you know much about the motives for the guy out? And it sounds like to me the same type thing, right?
Well, and that's what the investigation is going to have to determine. Clearly, the killer in New Orleans was a jihadist and radicalized jihadist by every measure that we know at this point. If there was no manifesto discovered yet, no communication in the attack in Vegas, but that's what the investigation will have to determine what this individual's motivations truly were.
Yeah. All right, Randy, thanks so much for your work and for being on with us here on American Family Radio. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, bye-bye. Fred, go ahead.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We're learning more like every hour about what happened in New Orleans. We're now being told that bomb-making materials were found at the New Orleans Airbnb that was rented by this 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. So, like you were just pointing out in your interview with Randy there, it seems in Las Vegas it was almost a political statement trying to be made by the fact that he rented a Tesla, Elon Musk connection.
Yeah.
And decided
the Trump hotel.
And parked in front of the Trump hotel.
Yeah. And blew himself up though. It's a suicide mission.
No question about it.
That's what jihadis do, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
That distinguishes, when I say this is Islamic jihad terrorism, that is there's a difference between somebody who does that and willing to blow themselves up and somebody who maybe wants to commit an act of violence but not necessarily die themselves. You know what I'm
that's
saying?
right. Now, in the case of Mr. Jabbar in New Orleans, there is no question. He planned this. He had the bomb-making materials at the Airbnb where he was staying. He knew. He drove into that huge crowd there at 3 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day in New Orleans. He knew what he was doing. He had bomb material in the vehicle. Now, we do need to clear something up. Initially, it was thought that, and it was reported that he didn't act alone. But they're now saying they cannot make a connection with anybody else between Mr. Jabbar and helpers. There was an initial report that people said they saw 3 men and a woman setting down explosive devices in the same area. But they now seem to be moving away from that. But there's no question about
15 people, Chris, are dead.
Yeah,
15 dead, and about a dozen still in hospital at least.
Yeah.
Some of them in critical position.
On our website, afn.net, Fred posted an Associated Press story earlier today. One of the people interviewed about the attack in New Orleans is 18-year-old Zion Parsons of Gulfport, Mississippi. He said he saw the truck, quote, barreling through, throwing people like in a movie scene, throwing people into the air. He went on to say that bodies were all up and down the street. Everybody was screaming and hollering. One of his friends was among the deceased, Nikra Dito. Excuse me.
So are you going to play a clip? Or no?
No, I'm just mentioning some
thought you were getting
stories
ready
there.
to play a clip.
Now, speaking of clips, we do have a lot of things at our disposal today. We actually played this in the top of the hour newscast, but it's a great soundbite from Governor Jeff Landry. Obviously, he needs our thoughts and prayers, as do the victims' family members and law enforcement having to investigate all this. But here is Governor Jeff Landry responding to this today on Fox and Friends, clip 1.
It's a somber day here in the city and around Louisiana. I mean, we have parents that are going to have to, that are making funeral arrangements as we speak, that are waiting to have their loved ones released to them. And again, I mean, each of those is a reminder of the terrorism that exists and people and the evil out there that they want to afflict on America. And so, again, we continue to have an outpouring of prayer and support for those families. Again, as you walk through that list, a lot of those are Louisianians. I'm going to be going over to the crime scene again this morning and walking through it, hoping to maybe reach out and talk to some of those parents as well, and to make sure that they're getting the support that they need so that they can start to work on some closure. And but again, you know, it's prayers and support, and the only thing that'll get them through is our faith.
Now, Tim, one of the things that people are on edge about today is the fact that the All-State Sugar Bowl was postponed from yesterday to this afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. Yeah. And obviously, security is going to be on high alert there. We also have a much shorter clip of Governor Jeff Landry talking about security today and moving forward. Clip 2.
Security is going to be tight. We have all the confidence that we're going to be able to put this game on. The Superdome is completely secure. Again, the FBI continues to pour resources into the state. We hope to update you all sometime today on exactly what those resources look like as best we can. Again, maybe not getting into the specifics, but giving y'all a 50,000-foot view of the amount of resources that have been poured into the city.
All right, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. We've been discussing New Orleans and Las Vegas attacks. Apparently, well, obviously in New Orleans, a jihadi attack. Now, this was not a foreign person. This was an American citizen who served in our military.
Born and raised.
Ray, did you read about him, about this?
Yeah, I did. I mean, you've got a guy raised in America. So we're not talking somebody from Kuwait, right?
Right.
We're not talking somebody from Saudi Arabia, somebody from would appear to be a fairly normal American background. Got into the military somewhere along the way, got radicalized to the point he was willing to do what he did at 3 a.m. on Bourbon Street, knowing it was the end of his life. So how radical do you have to be? And really the same goes for the guy in Las Vegas. You have to know this is it. This is the end.
Right.
This is what radical ideology leads you to. You take out as many knowing you're going to die. I just want to know, I was thinking to myself, listening to what Randy said, that there are at least some possible connections. Possible. We
right.
have to stress that, right? Possible connections between Las Vegas and New Orleans. And if that proves to be the case, that is a terrifying thought, Tim. It's bad enough to think about the horrific thing that happened in New Orleans. But if those two things are somehow related, then I suppose we'd all better be prepared. This could happen and probably will happen again somewhere else.
Let me ask you this. Yes, sadly and tragically, it probably will. Of course, we live in a free and open society, and you can't stop everything. Let me ask you this, Chris. Do you know the answer to this question? The man who did this in New Orleans, his name was what?
42. Excuse me. 42-year-old Shamsu Din Jabbar. He was a U.S. citizen from Texas.
Okay. My question is, did he have a did he have an American name, and he changed it like Muslims do to conform with his religion? Do you know if that happened to him?
It has been reported that he did have a previous name.
Because when I saw a picture of him, I thought it was a Saudi or somebody from Yemen or something like that, like it happened on 9/11. Then I saw the picture, and he's an African American or a black fella, and he served in our military, and he didn't have an obviously. I know that there are black people around the world who are Muslims who have Muslim sounding names, but I was just confused by that because I thought military, he's not a foreigner, so evidently. What happens with a lot of these folks, kind of like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You remember him?
Lou Alcindor.
Yeah, Lou Alcindor. Okay, well, what these people do, and it's mostly, at least in the celebrity world, it's mostly been black males that have converted from whatever they were to Islam, and when they convert to Islam, like Lou Alcindor changed to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like Cassius Clay changed to Muhammad Ali. They changed their names to, I don't know, what would the word be, Ray? To conform to their new religion? Is that?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or to reflect their new belief in Allah and Islam. So,
I mean, when you change your name, you're changing your whole identity.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
There was a New York Times article yesterday in which they interviewed people that knew Shamsu Din Jabbar, and someone told the New York Times they had been brought up Christian, but that he had been brought up Christian, but that he had converted to Islam at some point in the past. And that person went on to say, as far as I know, he was a Muslim for most of his life. Now, the Tesla driver has also been identified by various authorities and news outlets. I can mention that after we come back.
But Steve Jordahl showed us a picture of Jabbar when he was in the military, and he had Jabbar on his ID.
So he converted
somewhere along the way
to Islam, maybe while he was in the military.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to say the bad part out loud. I'm worried that our military is infiltrated with Islamic jihadists and or other enemies of America that has happened under the Biden administration because of our very liberal DEI policies.
Right. Yep.
I mean, am I the only one?
Nope.
Who's wondering about this?
Nope.
All right, we'll be back. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
The very first book in the Bible has some wonderful words for us. Here's a little short verse from the 28th chapter. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Let me share a story with you. Sam put on his top coat, picked up his briefcase, and walked to the door. Saying goodbye to the rest of the family, he proceeded to his car. He backed out of his driveway and headed down the road to the office. At the intersection, he looked both ways, and then he started across, and that's when it happened. There was a terrible screech. tires grinding on the pavement, coming to a sudden and complete stop. Sam jumped, looked toward his right to see a big tractor-trailer bearing down on him. In an instant, his instinct told him to brace himself to prepare for a terrible accident. The truck was about to crash into his small, foreign-made automobile. He braced and waited, but miraculously, the driver of the giant truck managed to get the big rig stopped just prior to the anticipated collision. With a sigh of relief and thankfulness, Sam uttered a quick prayer. Now, it's only fair to say that Sam was not normally a very religious man, living mostly by his own creeds and just not having much time or interest in the kid stuff, you know. But for some reason, he spontaneously let it slip. "Thank you, Lord," he said, suddenly remembering that there was someone beyond himself. Well, Sam and the driver of the truck got out and surveyed the situation. "Man," said the truck driver, "you're a mighty lucky person. Just a split-second difference in timing, and you very probably wouldn't be around this old world right now. You'd better be thankful that I had my brakes reworked just last week. I would hate to think what would have happened if I had not. And I started to put it off, but changed my mind at the last minute and went ahead. Buddy, you better thank goodness that you're still alive." "Mister," said Sam, "I've already thanked goodness." Well, in a few moments, Sam was on his way to the office again. At a service station along the route he took, he saw Bill. Bill was a friend of his who worked in the same office. Bill was also the religious guy in their group, a regular churchgoer. Sam wheeled in to speak to Bill and tell him about the truck. "Hey, Bill," hollered Sam out of his window as he pulled along his religious friend. "The Lord's really taking care of me this morning. I pulled out in front of this big truck, and the Lord performed a miracle and stopped it just before it got me. It sure is great how the Lord takes care of us, isn't it?" "It sure is," said Bill. "He performed a miracle for me this morning also." "He did?" said Sam. "What happened? Did you nearly get hit by a big truck like me?" "Well, not quite," said Bill. "He just kept me from pulling out in front of any big trucks." Strange how we can find him in the miracles and not in the everyday events, isn't it?
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Therefore, preparing your minds for action and being sober-minded, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. 1 Peter 1:13.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues. Happy New Year. You're listening to American Family Radio. Today's Issues is the name of this show. Tim with Fred and Chris and Ray. And we thank you for listening. We were discussing what happened in New Orleans and what happened in Las Vegas. Almost, I guess, close to simultaneously. Terrorist attacks on our soil here in the U.S. by U.S. citizens who served in our military. I was stunned when I read that. 10 years of service the man did in who killed all those folks in New Orleans. Okay, so we were talking before the break how when someone converts to Islam, they almost always change their name because, as Ray said, it changes their whole identity. And so the guy in New Orleans had changed, somewhere along life's way, had changed his name to reflect a Muslim name, an Arabic name. And the same, I said that most of the time when you hear about this happening, it's a black male that does this. Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, Lou Alcindor becomes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And there are many others that maybe not that high profile that are out there and have been out there. But you said, Chris, this is a white guy out in Las Vegas, right?
Yes, and actually has more military service than the New Orleans
Did he
attacker.
also change his name?
No. And I can say that because various news outlets, and by various I mean a ton, have now identified the driver of the Tesla Cybertruck in Las Vegas as 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger. He served over 19 years in the Army, 18 of which were spent in Special Forces. His current role was listed as a remote and autonomous systems manager, to which he had been doing for a few months.
How long did he serve in the military?
19 years.
In what branch?
And 18 years were in Special Forces. He was raised in Ohio, according to Daily Mail. He moved to Colorado Springs as an adult, and the investigation continues on from there.
So, what do you think, Fred? I mentioned before the break, I know some people are going to say that's a kind of a no evidence to support what you're thinking, Tim, and that is that our military has been infiltrated by people who hate our country. I don't have any evidence of that other than these two guys, and there have been other things that have happened. You pointed out, Fred, though.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Fort Hood, November 2009. Major Nadal Hassan killed 13
Another
people.
Muslim.
He opened in a
American.
classroom here or a building, opened fire, killed 13 people, and wounded dozens of others. And in the wake of that and investigating, it was shown. Now this is during the Barack Obama years. It was shown that people knew he had sympathies towards radical Islam.
Right, but the Obama administration didn't want you to talk about that because it made Muslims look bad.
Yes.
Is that right?
That is correct.
And they sent an edict out on that.
Yes.
Don't talk about his motives
Mm-hmm.
and connect it with Islam because that makes they basically said that, Ray. Just trying to basically
They were
hide
trying to
that
whitewash it, cover
Yeah.
it up,
Mm-hmm.
but it was there. I mean, he was a radicalized Islamic terrorist inside the United States Armed Forces. We finally found out about it too late.
Yeah, but when you can't talk about that inside the military, it becomes, or you get disciplined yourself. Then to me it would seem to thwart any kind of investigation on. You know what I'm saying?
No, if you're ordered not to talk in negative terms,
right?
That's an order.
Right. Well, listen, this has happened other places, maybe not so high profile. You remember, was it Florida? Was it Elgin Air Force Base? This happened about 2 years ago. You remember these Muslims killed some folks? They were from Saudi Arabia training. Remember that? And then we also had the situation in Chattanooga about 8 or 10 years ago where an Islamic jihadist who was in the military, killed some people there. Here, Ray, let me listen.
Mm-hmm.
Not all Muslims are terrorists, okay?
Right.
We don't want to imply that, but almost all the terrorists are Muslims. All right.
Right.
So that's true as well. So my question, Ray, is these people like this guy in New Orleans, 15 people dead, I don't know how many injured, innocent people, just walking back to their hotel or going to their car to go home. They've been on partying the New Year, but they weren't hurting anybody. They were just on their way, walking around. And so I'm just saying that they were completely and totally innocent, undeserving of any kind of death, certainly. And so this guy decides to go riding his speed driving his truck down the road, and he knew he was going to mow down as many people as he could, and then he had a gun. He was going to kill people, and then, as you said, he had to be certain he was going to be killed by the cops himself, and that's exactly what happened. But here's my question to you, Ray: is what's the motivation for again, not we're not a blanket condemnation of all Muslims. Obviously, that's crazy. I'm saying there is a teaching, though, Ray, inside Islam, somewhere, that teaches what this guy did is honoring Allah.
Well,
is that
there is
right?
there is a poisonous stream.
Okay.
there's a poisonous stream, and we are not saying it is the mainstream.
Right,
but there is a
right.
poisonous stream inside Islam, and who knows how big it is, but there are these radical Muslim clerics scattered all over the world teaching and preaching hate and filling their followers with the notion that Allah wants you to get in the struggle. Remember, jihad means struggle. So in the struggle to support your God and your religion, go and kill the infidels, and you will be received into great glory in heaven. Now, we've all heard about, the virgins and all that. I don't think we have to suggest that every single person who blows himself up is motivated that way, but there is a poisonous, if you tell people to hate Americans and hate Americans and hate Americans.
Hate Christians and Jews, too.
And Christians and Jews, and call
Right.
America the great Satan
Right.
over and over and over again, then some people are going to imbibe that kind of poison, and eventually they are going to act upon it. And perhaps this fella at 3 a.m. going down Bourbon Street thought he was serving his God. That's only true if you understand at that point his God is the devil, not the God of the Bible.
It's kind of interesting, too, the similarities. There was an incident just in the last few weeks in Germany where a Saudi doctor mowed down a bunch of people at a German market.
That's right.
And in 2017 in New York, a immigrant from Uzbekistan, he had been here for seven years, I think. He rented a truck, listen to the similarities, and mowed down a bunch of people on a bike track. He killed 8 people in that. So there's, these guys read about what works, these rented truck things. I think there was something in Paris back several years ago, something very similar.
No, outside of Paris, I think.
Yeah, big truck,
big
mowing
truck,
people down. So there's a somewhere there's a book being written by Islamic terrorists. This is a method that works.
Yeah, yes. So, but if you're wondering, as I do, what is in it for the killers? Because otherwise you go, these people are insane. Okay, you can say that in a generic sort of response to something like this, which is crazy. It's madness. But the thinking of the person who did this is not insane. Okay? It was well thought out. That's not insanity. You go and get weapons. You go and get explosives. You plan your route. You rent your car. You plan the date and time to get as much carnage as you can get. Okay, that's a thought process that, yes, is evil and it's wicked, as Ray has pointed out. But that's not where you go, that person is insane. Like they're going out howling at the moon or something like that. No, it's just pure evil and wickedness. And you wonder, well, why do people do this? What is the motive? And we always look at motives for people when they do evil and wicked things, whether it be this or something else that has happened in the news that will happen. Sadly, we're always looking for motives, right? So it's the police officer. The police often come out, whatever crime is committed, say, okay, here was the motive behind it. Was it right? In the case of Islamic Jihad, their motive is they think they're pleasing Allah if they can kill the enemies of Allah. The enemies of Allah are not just American soldiers or Israelis. The enemies of Allah are non-Muslims. And even for depending on the sect, SECT, Sunni or Shia, or maybe some off-brands sometimes, but most of the time it's Sunni or Shia. They think that, so anybody that doesn't fall into their camp is an enemy of Allah. And, of course, Iran has been they're Shia. They're not Sunnis. Sunnis, Saudi Arabia, and that part of the world. They teach that Israel, i.e. Jews, are the little Satan, and the United States. Listen, those people consider us all Christians. We know in America we're not all Christians, but if you're If you're an American, you're from the great Satan, which is a Christian country, which is the U.S., and they say, well, the U.S. is the enemy of Allah. So I'm making a long-winded point here. So the guy in New Orleans and the guy in Las Vegas, although he didn't kill anybody, fortunately, and thank the Lord for that, but the guy in New Orleans, he served in the military for 10 years. Yes, he got radicalized, but he did. But again, we shouldn't confuse radicalization from Islam with insanity. In the way that you would put a straitjacket on somebody and say they're out of their minds. These people aren't out of their minds. They know precisely what they're doing. They're just evil and wicked, and they're motivated by, as Ray said earlier, the devil. And the devil, listen, you may laugh and say the devil. You believe in Santa Claus and Bigfoot too. Listen, Ray, Jesus Christ believed in the devil. Am I right?
He said in John chapter 8 that you are from your father, the devil, who was a murderer from the beginning. And he said in John 10, the thief, talking about the devil, is come to steal and to kill and to destroy. Satan loves death. He loves killing. He loves murdering. And so whatever else we can say about religious motivations, when that fellow got behind the wheel of the pickup truck and the fellow stayed in the driver's compartment of the Tesla, both those guys, they were
right.
They were following the god of this world, who is Satan himself.
Yeah. All right. So, by the way, there was one other fellow that the baby boomers will remember. That was a high-profile conversion to Islam. He changed his name, and he was the folk singer Cat Stevens. You remember him, Ray?
Yeah.
He was a big star.
A big star
in the 60s and 70s. You remember him?
Oh yeah.
Cat Stevens, and then he, I don't know when, the 80s maybe, he converted to Islam, changed his name, moved to London, went with full Islamic garb and grew the beard out and never looked back.
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever even sang anymore, publicly or concerts or anything like that. Maybe he did. But that was another example of what Ray said. When people convert to Islam, and they're Westerners, they almost always, if they're dead serious about it, they change their name. And they change their whole tone, their whole political speech, their spiritual speech. You'll hear them.
Look, I'm old enough to remember what a big deal it was when Cassius Clay, back in the 60s. I'm old enough to remember that. I was young back then, but became Muhammad Ali.
Right.
And Americans were complete. And then in the 60s, Americans didn't know much about Islam at all. And what a shock it was.
Yeah.
What a shock.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Again, 15 dead in New Orleans. And how many injured, Chris?
Oh, a lot.
A lot.
It depends on the, I'm going to get you the official count because it depends on the outlet you look at.
And the FBI and the state of Louisiana and all their agencies, the governor, the attorney general, the mayor of New Orleans, all of them are having press conferences and actively involved in the investigation of what happened there. But joining us now is Sandy Rios. Sandy is the host of Sandy Rios 24/7, a very popular podcast on American Family Radio on our website. Sandy joins us now. Good morning, Sandy.
Hey, good morning, Tim. How are you guys this morning?
We're doing well. Like you, we're saddened, like Americans all over the country. We're saddened by what happened in New Orleans.
Yeah, Tim, I've had a long history with this issue of the Muslim Brotherhood and terror attacks. I actually consider myself an expert. I was targeted by the SPLC because the way I covered this for a long time. The only reason I say that is because what I witnessed, I don't know if you want me to talk about this, but when I first got to do you want me to talk about this? I think you had something else you wanted to talk about, but
Well, we're very sensitive here, Sandy, about what we talk about. So I've got your button here to mute you if you go off. We don't know what to expect from you. No, I'm serious. Go ahead. Speak.
Well, there's some background I think that's important to help us understand. And, as you all just said, I was listening a little bit. We didn't know much about Islam, not until the attacks on 9/11.
Right.
Americans just were really ignorant. We couldn't even pronounce their names. I'll raise my hand to that. I couldn't. But what we realized quickly, the FBI were experts on terrorism. They had great experts on that. And they fought back with a vengeance. Bruce was in Chicago during where the Muslim Brotherhood had an organization where the FBI got a tip that they had all of this information at their headquarters, and they were a terrorist organization. And a newspaper, I think it was the Tribune, tipped off the CARE, I think it was CARE at the time, that the FBI was coming to raid them, and they shredded all the information. That's just an incident to tell you this was a long time ago. This is before Bruce and I even got married. So when I moved to D.C. in 2001, it was right after 9/11. And what I learned, and I'll just tell you as quickly as I can, the thing that changed everything was that right after 9/11, President Bush, of course, Karl Rove was part of he was the big brain in that whole incident. Karl convinced President Bush that the Jews had the Democrats, but the Muslim could be part of the Republican Party, because we did agree on some issues like abortion and gay marriage and things like that. So immediately, the Muslim Brotherhood was welcomed into the White House. They spent a lot of time there. In fact, the day after 9/11, they were in the White House in their full Islamic garb, invited by Karl. And we know, because we've had documents now, that their intention, because of the undercover of a house in Virginia sometime before this 9/11 took place, their intention was to destroy, I can tell you the exact words, we want to destroy their miserable house from within. The Muslim Brotherhood has a whole set of goals, and this was way back in the 90s. And so we know that. The FBI knew it. It was discovered. We knew all of that. We declared them to be a terrorist organization. We defamed CARE. CARE was no longer welcome on the airwaves. And all of that reversed when the Republican leadership decided that they would pull in the Muslims because they were peaceful, you see. Now, I'm not saying there are no peaceful Muslims. I am not saying that. But I'd say guilty until proven innocent. That's how I feel about it. And that's a very radical statement. But the teaching of Islam is completely incompatible with the West and with Christianity and the Western civilization. They cannot live with us unless they deny the tenets of their faith. And so the Republicans allowed them in, and I can't tell you how many battles myself, how many I had. We had many of them start to run for office, and we tried to expose them because we knew their terrorist past. We knew things about them. And so gradually, what happened? Obama comes in, it gets worse. Yeah. The FBI scrubs all of its information about what radical Islam really is. The agents now haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. And all of those experts that the FBI had were let go. They were given early retirement.
Under the Obama administration, right?
Yeah. Well, yes, and under Mueller. Under Director Mueller.
Robert Mueller, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's a tiny bit. Except that I saw it all change. Suddenly we can't, we're the bad ones because we raise questions. And so this has been simmering now for 20 years. Yeah. And they've been growing and making their plans. Nothing has changed with them. This is what they do all over the world. And this is what they will do here.
Yeah, I guess what was stunning to me, and Chris, you can reiterate this. Yep. By the way, folks, you're listening to the radio program, Today's Issues, here on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim with Fred, Chris, Ray, and Sandy is joining us, Sandy Rios. We're talking about what happened in New Orleans and the motivations for these Islamic jihadists who were responsible for New Orleans and for Las Vegas. The Las Vegas attack was a Tesla truck parked in front of a Trump hotel. It blew up. The guy committed suicide. He sat in the car while it blew up. He was himself an Islamic jihadist. Did you say he had or had not changed his name that you knew of, Chris?
The Tesla driver in Las Vegas, he is
What
not.
was his name?
Matthew Livensberger,
Okay.
37, 39 years old.
Okay. But he was Islamic. He was Islamic.
We don't
know that yet. Okay.
He's
I'm just
19-year member of Special Forces.
Okay. Without evidence, as they say, I'm just going to say he is. He is like this guy in New Orleans who was a confirmed Islamic jihadist, because otherwise people don't do what he did unless they have a motive, and that fits right in with Islamic jihadist, the way that they conduct.
Yeah, Timothy McVeigh comes to mind, but that's been 30
They always
years.
pull that Timothy McVeigh. We got one to 100.
Yeah, I'm just
You know
trying
what?
to think.
Go ahead,
somebody
go
up
ahead,
top of
Sandy.
my
Let
head.
me let me interject something really, really important that
Yeah.
you might not know, and the only reason I know it is because some insider told me. John Brennan was the CIA director. Remember, he was that CIA director
I
under
remember that,
Barack
yeah.
Obama. Well, when he was with the CIA station in Saudi Arabia, he converted to Islam.
Oh,
That's
Brennan
not a widely
did.
known. Yes, and remember what happened under Barack Obama?
Sure.
He advanced. His first speech to the world was to the Arab world. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
went
I
over there
remember
and
that.
made
Yeah,
this
we apologize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It was the
and even-
World Apology Tour. I remember that.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and the space program had
yeah.
to include Muslims. I mean, it was stunning, jaw dropping, and chaplains were Muslim Brotherhood chaplains were replacing Christian chaplains. Military chaplains could not mention the name of Jesus. We have to remember how bad things were, and anybody that dared to express a concern was an Islamophobic and destroyed.
Yes.
By the press and by the I should know. And so, so we were. This was one of those many times in the last 25, 30 years that we were not allowed to speak the truth on an issue, and that the cart was turned upside down on what's true and what is not true.
Right.
And we've paid a terrible price. I just hope. I knew this was. This sounds like I'm boasting, and I'm not. I just knew this was going to be an issue because they've been quiet now for the last 20 years.
Right.
Now they're coming. Did you see the video of the pro-Hamas hordes taking over Manhattan? Yeah, either yesterday or this morning. I'm not sure when the
No,
video.
I did not see that. No.
Yeah, they're demanding international jihad. Not jihad, they had a different word for it. But intifada.
Yeah.
Intifada. International intifada.
Oh, me. Well, hey, Sandy, how can folks, you have 3 podcasts a week now, right?
Yes. It's Sandy Rios 24/7, and you can listen to it, of course, on afr.net in the podcast section. You can also listen to it from my website, which is sandyrios.com. It's on any podcast platform, but that's the simplest. And
Yeah.
for our AFA listeners, that's the great way
Okay,
to
if you
listen.
want great information and interviews, and Sandy keeps up with current events better than anybody or as good as anybody, and so go to Sandy Rios 24/7 and check it out. We also, you go to afr.net, click on the podcast, you can find it there, Sandy's podcast. Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, guys. Great to talk to you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Same to you.
It's Sandy Rios joining us. We'll be back momentarily with more of today's issues right after the news.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The climax of the book of Exodus, the Creator God came to dwell with his people. You can't approach the holiness of God however you want. Jesus understood this when he says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
Friends of Israel, bringing biblical truth about Israel and the Messiah. Saturdays, 2 p.m. Central on AFR. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Peel. Lawmakers are being briefed on the New Year's Day terrorist attack in New Orleans. Aisha Hosni reporting from Capitol Hill.
It's a bicameral call, so there are members of the Senate Homeland Security Committee as well as the House Homeland Security Committee that are allowed to be on this call with the FBI, as well as the Louisiana delegations from both of these chambers. And there are a ton of questions. I've been talking with some of these members this morning, and they have a lot to ask of the FBI. We're told that they're going to be briefed by the Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division, that is David Scott, and members want to know more about the massive security concerns. The bollards, they weren't functioning at the time, and that allowed the suspect to drive onto the sidewalk and then onto Bourbon Street.
House Speaker Mike Johnson represents Louisiana's 4th Congressional District. He says incidents like this are the result of dereliction of duty on the part of Biden administration officials.
We all know that for the last 4 years, the Biden administration has been completely derelict in its duty. The congressional Republicans, we here in the House and the Senate, have repeatedly asked the DHS under the Biden administration about the correlation, the obvious concern about terrorism and the wide open border. The idea that dangerous people were coming here in droves and setting up potentially terrorist cells around the country. We have been ringing the alarms. We impeached DHS Secretary Mayorkas in the House over that very issue and others related to it. So this is a big concern. They told us for 4 years that the number one threat was so-called racially motivated extremism. It was nonsense. This is the thing that we were all concerned about. This is why we raised the alarms. This is why the Biden administration has a lot to account for here, and we see now in glaring view of everybody that this dereliction of duty has real consequences.
New details emerging about the Tesla Cybertruck explosion that happened just outside Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Chanley Painter with more.
Police say they have identified the person who was driving that Tesla Cybertruck. It is believed the driver was a Colorado Springs native with military experience. The person was killed in the explosion. 7 others were injured. Authorities say they found gas and camp fuel canisters as well as large firework mortars in the truck. They were able to trace that vehicle back to Colorado using video footage captured at charging stations. Now investigators are trying to determine if there is a link to the attack in New Orleans. The Cybertruck investigation did involve input from Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Musk and police credit the Cybertruck for actually containing that explosion, directing the blast upwards and not even breaking the glass doors on the hotel lobby.
The House preparing to hold a vote on whether Speaker Mike Johnson should keep his position. Chad Pergram with more.
It's unclear if House Speaker Mike Johnson can wrap up the Speaker vote quickly. Anywhere from 12 to 17 Republicans have reservations about Johnson, and he can only lose one GOP vote. The House cannot swear in members, debate bills, or certify the presidential election without a Speaker. Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie opposes Johnson. Indiana Republican Victoria Spartz believes Johnson failed to keep his promises on government funding bills and slicing the debt.
The University of Minnesota is pushing a plan to pay children to play with so-called transgender dolls, a plan which so far appears to be failing.
Under the school's National Center for Gender Spectrum Health, the program is targeting 5 and 10-year-olds and their parents to play with transgender dolls as a therapeutic tool. Lori Higgins of Breakthrough Ideas compares them to Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head dolls.
You can take out one part of a doll, and that shows us anything. And gender identity just refers to one's feelings about one's maleness or femaleness. So how does taking a Mr. Potato Head Barbie doll and moving the body parts around tell us anything about one's feelings?
Higgins says the Spectrum Center doesn't use facts, but uses dogmatic leftist theories, not based in reality.
Things that are not facts. So, of course, 5 to 10-year-olds are completely incapable of understanding these ideas. And this is an obnoxious, poisonous activity this center is doing, and they better not be getting public money for it.
I'm Bob Kellogg.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. By the way, you can download this show on a podcast every day. So if you miss our show or, and you want to listen to it on demand, just go to AFR.net. AFR.net, click on the, what's this sign that says podcast, and you can click on it there, and you can get it anytime you want to listen to our program, any of the other programs we have here on American Family Radio. Happy New Year. It's Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. I'm Tim with Fred Jackson and Ray Pritchard, raised in Kansas City. We're in Tupelo, and Steve Jordahl is 3 feet away from me.
I am. Big four.
Steve Paisley Jordahl. Good morning, Brother Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
It's a sad start to our new year nationally because of this, what happened in New Orleans, Steve. That's the big story today still, right?
It is. It's kind of taking the oxygen out of the room if you're looking for other news, but it's important, so I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. So you know that today at 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central, they're going to have the Sugar Bowl. They've delayed it by a day. I was talking to one of our security guys who were watching the TV.
One of our security guys?
One of our security guys here at American Family Association. He says it's probably not a good idea to play it even yet. Change venues or do whatever you have to do because he's not convinced, and he's got a security background, that place is secure, that there's not going to be something happen.
This afternoon.
Well,
okay.
I don't want to speak it into existence.
I know.
And
so what you're talking about is the Sugar Bowl, which is Notre Dame versus Georgia, which is part of the college football playoffs. Mm-hmm. That was supposed to be played last night. Got postponed, not quite 24 hours, but it's supposed to be played this afternoon. Right. But when I was listening to the, I don't know who it was, the mayor or whatever of New Orleans, they were talking about they were doing sweeps again, security sweeps of the Superdome, and doing everything they possibly could. That's the reason the game was postponed. It was postponed also out of respect for the families who lost loved ones, but also to give police and security enough time to, I guess, get their plans together, right? To secure the area. So we will, hopefully and prayerfully nothing else happens.
I agree, but there's, I don't know what, 50, 60, 70,000 people going to be in
But Ray, I don't know how in the world. Well, I do know how. In the case of New Orleans, you wonder, why didn't they have these big boulders up, not boulders, what am I calling them? Concrete?
Oh, the concrete barriers.
Concrete barriers to block the streets. That's what they normally
evidently there was some breakdown because they were I read that they were supposed to be there. And maybe, I'm just speculating here, 3 o'clock in the morning you think, well, the danger is past. But it's Bourbon Street, right? So there's stuff going on there all night long. If those concrete barriers had been where they were supposed to be, this would not have happened. And, Steve, to your point, look, you got the security guy who said that to you. That's a very legitimate concern. You got the Sugar Bowl. You got the Gator Bowl coming after that. You got other bowl games coming up in the days to come. We've all seen, haven't we, these apparent copycat killers out there. I was looking on Fox News right now, and it says, the FBI is telling us it's a lone wolf. I guess all that means is they haven't been able to find a clear connection yet. I'm trying to think, Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This postponement of the game from last night till today, that's the first time I can remember a sporting event being canceled because of a terroristic act.
A lot of them were canceled after 9/11.
Okay, that's what I was trying to say, going back to 9/11. It's the first time since then that something like this has happened that I can remember.
The Attorney General of Louisiana, Liz Muriel, was interviewed on Fox this morning, and she has the same concerns as our security person.
Really?
She'd like to see that game delayed at least another day. She says there's still too many people around. The investigation is just starting into this terrorist attack. There's no telling. There could be allies of this individual, Mr. Jabbar. And she expressed publicly this morning that she'd like to see this game delayed.
The other thing that Kevin, or our security guy, mentioned was that LSU's not that far away, and changing venues, it holds probably similar amount of people. It would make a lot of people angry, but better angry than dead. That would also be a safety factor. They couldn't; those terrorists would not have planned for LSU Stadium if they decided to do that, but they're not going to.
Tulane also has a.
That's true. That's true.
Has a stadium now, their own stadium in New Orleans. Of course, that's still in New Orleans, but if something were being planned to attack the Superdome, that would thwart that. But you can't stop everything. You know what I'm saying?
I was at the Superdome on Sunday. Went to a Raiders game there just on a whim. Heather and I decided to go. And I got to tell you, there's the regular amount of security where they have metal detectors you got to go through and everything, but it's not. They're not armed people watching that stuff. And even if you can't get into the Superdome, even if there's a plaza outside, even outside of that, there's a lot of traffic. I mean, it's a party in New Orleans when that happens. There's thousands of people walking around that didn't get into the game that are down there street performing or watching or whatever. A lot of damage can be done. It's just
like I said here, you can't stop everything in a free and open society. You can plan as best you can, and you can try to keep your. If I'm going to something like that, as the old expression, your head's on a swivel.
Yeah.
But you could have an Islamic Jihadi attack a mall today somewhere in America. I mean, or you could have. You're just going to have. You just can't avoid everything, is what I'm going to say. And I feel for these people who are responsible for the ball game today, because you've got. I know it sounds trivial, Ray, and I know it. To people say, well, just cancel the ball game. Well, you got
you can't.
You got thousands and thousands of fans who maybe, but you can't cancel the ball game. You're gonna have to play it somewhere because you got contracts with companies who are paying for and you've got to have a winner and a loser to go on to in the playoffs. So
this is the problem we faced ever since 9/11. How do you stop a man or a woman who's willing to let us say, as happens in the Middle East, strap the explosives around your body, blow yourself up inside a bus?
Yeah,
that's a tough one.
Yeah,
that is the Israelis have done as good a job as probably better than anybody in the world, and they can't stop all of that. Reminds me of what George W. Bush said about our security. We've got to be right every single time. The bad guys only have to be right once.
Yeah.
Last night, a day after this thing happened in New York City, thousands and thousands of pro-Palestinian people marched the streets saying, globalize the Intifada. So if you've got thousands of people that are sympathizing with this act, what does it take for even just out of passion, some of those doing something, much less if it was planned?
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm surprised nothing's happened at Times Square for the New Year's Eve celebration the last few years. With what? I don't know how many people are down there. 100,000 people or so?
No,
at least
more like a million, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
but at least
praise God, nothing has on a major scale.
That's the one thing that I think the New York City, it's the obvious target. They will take cement trucks and park them on the streets coming into the Times Square so that you can't get a vehicle past. I mean,
that's why I wondered why New Orleans didn't do the same thing.
Yeah, well,
somebody said that they were having repair work done on
the barriers.
On the barriers, and I don't know the whole story there. Maybe there's a reasonable explanation for that, but that's what led to this man being able to get through.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to today's issues. What else you got, Steve?
Well, we did talk about the playoffs a little bit, and you guys have you guys been? I don't know if you saw the Texas Arizona State game.
I did.
There was a foul that was not called, a targeting call that was not made.
I saw that. Yes, Arizona got ripped off.
Arizona got ripped off, and a lot of people are saying that they would have
Arizona
advanced.
State, rather.
They would have advanced, or at least they would have had a good chance of scoring had that penalty been enforced. And I'm reading now, Carson Kay, who is a college football analyst for CBS, is reporting that Arizona State has reportedly filed a lawsuit against college football playoffs.
What I would do. Go ahead.
What?
I don't know what.
Okay, so for those who
happen.
didn't see the ball game, you're talking about Arizona State and Texas playing yesterday in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, it was 24-8 Texas in the fourth quarter, and I went to do something else. And I know people who turned the TV off.
Yeah.
Come back in the den like 30 minutes later and going like, all right, Arizona State's about to tie the ball game. And it was 24-24, Ray. You saw that?
Right.
And then they go into overtime.
Yeah.
And
and they were tied at the end of the first overtime. In
yes,
Texas,
but there was a big play in that game.
Oh yeah. At
When
the end of the fourth quarter.
End of the fourth quarter, Arizona
Yeah.
State was moving down the field. Who knows if they'd have scored or not? There's no way to know. But there was a targeting call against Texas
that was missed.
that the officials did not call, even though it showed it clearly on the TV that it was targeting. That I text somebody, you want to know why there's conspiracy theories in college football? That the refs want somebody to win? I'm not saying this. I'm just saying I know there are people who say they wanted Texas to win because Texas has a bigger following than Arizona State going forward, and there's more money in that. Now, that's a pretty big leap from one particular play happening in a game. I'm just saying that that's what people start tweeting and texting. But
You're not the first person to say that.
But anyway, Texas ended up winning on a like.
So on what grounds is Arizona State going to sue the college football playoffs?
Well,
You're not
this
gonna
is a good
reverse
question. Because I looked for
Who's suing?
Arizona State has reportedly,
The
according to
university.
CBS, Arizona State University has reportedly filed a lawsuit against the college football playoffs. I
You
guess that would
can't.
be the
Yeah,
NCAA.
that's silly. I'm just saying that if that's true, that's just silly, and it's probably just symbolic to make a formal protest of some kind.
Oh man!
But they definitely, and this wasn't Texas' fault. This is the refs' fault, huh?
Right.
I mean, it was targeting, and the whole world saw it, and they waved it off, and it caused Arizona State to not be able to continue their drive.
That's right.
Which would have led to probably a field goal attempt at the end of the game, which they may have then won it and been like a Cinderella story.
The other interesting thing about that game is during the post-game press conference, Arizona State was there, and their running back, Cam Skadaboo, was talking, and all of a sudden an official walks in with a trophy and announced that Cam Skadaboo, on the losing team, was named the MVP of the game and gave him the trophy at the press conference.
Well, he was. He's the closest thing to Superman that I've seen in college football for one game. Huh? That guy. What's his name? I forget.
Cam Skadaboo.
Skadaboo.
Yeah. How can you forget that name?
Right.
He'll be in the NFL.
He was sick on the sidelines.
Yeah, hurling.
He'd throwing up on the sidelines. He'd go in and play a play and be so sick he'd have to come off.
Yeah, his stomach virus or something like that.
Man.
And he's like a man among boys out there.
He was a Superman.
Yeah, almost single-handedly beat Texas. But anyway, they didn't. Why? Because there's a conspiracy against Arizona State.
There's
Fred, you're not saying anything.
Fred ain't saying
No, hockey's my game.
He's waiting on the hockey conspiracies.
He's saying targeting.
Do they have targeting in hockey?
No, in hockey,
that's part of the game.
That's part of the game, right?
They do have one. There's one thing you can do in hockey that you get you in the penalty box that's a threat to somebody. What is that called? Body checking or something? What is that called?
Boarding.
What, like waterboarding?
Well,
no.
You can't waterboard during
Slamming
the
someone
game.
against the boards, against
Yeah.
the side of the
Hard. I got a few penalties for that.
Oh, you.
Fred.
Fred.
I'm disappointed
Way
to hear
to
that,
go.
Fred.
Hey, listen,
The Bible says you're supposed to be a peacemaker.
No, when it comes to hockey, you're Jekyll and Hyde.
That's right.
Oh,
But
man.
everybody enters the rink voluntarily, don't they?
That's
You know-
right.
You know what's going to
And
happen.
you talk about targets, you have
Yeah.
a target.
I imagine you might have taken one or two.
You're a
of those as
target,
well.
and you're a target, and you do target.
Yeah, I played defense. That was my position, and I took the job seriously.
Were you the enforcer, the bad guy, what do they call him, the guys that they hired just to cause fights and everything?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I like it sometimes.
That's
when
all Fred
called
wants-
for.
That's all Fred wants to talk about, his hockey days. All right, go ahead, Steve. What's
Hey,
the
all
next
right.
story?
So we've been talking a little bit about the FBI and its lack of focusing on the main issue, right?
What's the main issue?
Well, the main issue, and we saw this with we saw this during this attack in New Orleans, where the FBI came out immediately and said, no, it's not terrorism, and it was. And the FBI, who has been targeting Christians and moms at board meetings, and they have just the whole wrong priority. Their focus is completely wrong. And I want to play you a cut by Nicole Parker, who's a former FBI special agent and now a Fox contributor. And this is what she had to say about the whole thing, cut 11.
The American people need to feel confident in the FBI. And my opinion is because the FBI has not been focused on the top priorities, they are still focused on January 6th. Capitol violence trace. It is still on the homepage of the FBI's website. They focus on misdemeanors and put the full force of the federal government focusing on misdemeanors. While in the meantime, we have ISIS-inspired terrorist attacks going on, killing 15 innocent victims. The FBI has to change. I'm sorry. It is time for change. President Trump is going to change the FBI. It is time for reform.
Yeah, that's another reason those of us who love this country and agree with what she just said are thankful that President Trump won. Because had Harris won, Vice President Harris won, it would have got this would have the FBI and it would have got worse, far worse. It would, I don't know. At some point, it might have been irreparable. But listen, Mr. Trump has his issues, and I call him good Trump, bad Trump. but I will say good Trump wins 75, 80% of the time on issues, and he needs to, and he has chosen a really good person to be the Attorney General. That is the lady from Florida. What's her name?
Pam Bondi.
Huh?
Pam Bondi.
Pam Bondi.
Pam Bondi. I really like her when I've seen her on interviews in Fox News. And then Kash Patel is the fella he's chosen to lead the FBI. Most everybody I talk to likes him, and he's a patriot. And so this can do a lot to reverse the image of the FBI, and not just the image, the actions of the FBI to get them back on track, as this lady just said. Was talking about this, and she's a former FBI agent right there. Well, now I want to get back to this. Did you say, Steve, that the FBI said what happened in New Orleans was not terrorism?
At the very beginning, they did. At the first press conference, the FBI agent came out and said, we don't know much about this, but we will tell you this was not terrorism. And then they had to take it back.
Why do you say something like that? The best thing for the FBI to say initially is to say we don't know.
No, but I think
confirm.
This is part of their political correctness
to try to cover for Islamic jihadis.
I think that's what it must have been.
We got to cover for them.
See
we
no
can't
other-
be Islamic phobes, so we need to say. Now it turns out it was. And is it true that this guy had an ISIS flag on his truck?
Yes, correct.
So the FBI knows this, and they're still going, we don't know.
No, they're saying it wasn't. They didn't say they didn't
Now, did
know.
they reverse course, though?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They did.
Yeah. They can't argue with that now.
Yeah, I mean, well, good. They look like, huh?
Yeah.
You know what they look like if they came out and said it's not terrorism when the guy's flying an ISIS flag on his back of his truck? And
Keystone Cops.
yeah, that's what they would look like. But that doesn't surprise me that that would be their initial reaction. But their initial reaction should have been if they didn't know, we don't know, or they should have said the FBI, well, the guy's flying an ISIS flag on the back of his truck, so you tell us.
Right.
That'd probably been my reaction had I been the FBI spokesperson. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, let's do this. President Biden is doing what he can as he leaves office to
sleep.
Well, no,
Right.
he's actually doing things to.
Fred's got to get in one more dig, don't you,
I'm
Fred?
trying to get a euphemism that doesn't involve
dementia.
No, obscenity.
Let's avoid that on Christian radio, Steve. I
So
think
what
that'd
I'm
be a
saying
good
is
idea.
he's trying to show his disdain for the American people.
Biden is?
Biden is. And he's going to be doing something today. Fred, you were talking about this earlier, that is going to make some of these people, some of our, especially the J6ers, a little upset. What's going on?
Well, yeah, he's going to hand Liz Cheney, Republican Liz Cheney, his favorite Republican Liz Cheney. She is going to get, pardon me, the second highest civilian medal in the country for her participation in the January 6th committee panel. All right. That's remember
why?
Well,
she's getting some kind of what now?
She is getting the second highest civilian medal. It's the Presidential Citizens Medal.
For what?
Because she did the bidding of Nancy Pelosi in that committee.
Oh, you mean she's getting the medal because of her participation on the January 6th committee?
That is correct.
Okay.
Now, we have to remind people she was hand-chosen by Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
Nancy Pelosi, then House Speaker, rejected the two people that the Republicans wanted on that committee. I think Jim Jordan was one of them.
Right.
Jim
So-
Banks was the other.
Yeah, and so Nancy Pelosi picked two people, Republicans, who basically hated Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. It was the whole thing was produced, Ray, by a Hollywood producer. And
Oh,
we're
that's
finding
right.
out so
That's
much
right.
stuff that they did wrong.
You know what? That's sad. What happened to? I say sad, probably not the right word. What happened to Liz Cheney? What she did to herself?
Yes.
She was a very conservative United States House of Representative member from
Wyoming.
Yep.
And then she got in on this January 6th committee, and she began to get lauded and applauded by the left, and the media began to love her, and she just soaked all that in, it seems like, and went on with this charade of this endless. Remember that thing went on like 2 years, didn't it, or a year and a half, or something like? Huh?
Oh, yeah.
That January 6th committee. Listen, that was a 2-week deal. It's all that needed to be. 2 weeks, maybe a month at the most, and then end it and say these people acted wrong, and many of them are in jail, and they're going to have their day in court or whatever you want to say. But that's all that needs to be said about this, unless they wanted. Anyway, that's
Liz Cheney backed Donald Trump before January 6th. She was on his team. I mean, she was a Trump supporter before
Right.
January 6th.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Liz Cheney was not a bad. She was a pretty good congresswoman before all this. But if I were her, it ended up costing her her seat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but she's getting a medal out of it.
I wouldn't accept that. I would just say I did my job. I'm not getting a reward for just participating on a January 6th panel.
I think
Anyway, that thing she even if you were going to participate on it, she should have resigned after a couple of months and said, I see where this thing's going. And I'm not going to be a part of it. But instead, she went on and was a full participant. And anyway.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks to Fred, Steve, Chris, and Sandy. And let's see, the gentleman
Randy.
from Las Vegas, Randy Sutton there. And Brent Creeley, our producer. Thank you for listening to American Family Radio and this program, Today's Issues. Have a great day, rest of your day, folks, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.